What the heck is going on, everybody? It is time for me, Mark Boardman, to provide comment on the comment of the week. This one is coming from at JANKEGERREIS7748. That might spell something, but I don't know what it is, so I just spelled it. This is in relation to the podcast my good friend Ryan Muckenhern and I did on the 6 Arc. Is it really a big game cartridge? Well, let's read about that right now. My 12-year-old son got a large doe in Virginia for Youth Day. It was the first year ever for any member of our family. 6 Arc Ruger American Gen 2 Ranch, 103 grain ELDX. The deer appears to have hit the ground dead where she stood. He at least got both lungs and one shoulder. We are very satisfied with the performance, but have no experience with other cartridges on game. Well, it sounds like you got the answer you needed. Congrats to you. Congrats to your son. Congrats to your family. You guys got a freezer full of delicious organic wild game meat. And you're also going to get a couple super sweet Vortex Nation podcast hoodies if you're watching on YouTube. I'm wearing one right now. We're going to reach out to you via the YouTubes and hopefully get a hoodie headed your and your son's way so you can cozy up this fall and, you know, wear it while you're eating some of these good steaks or something. Without further ado, let's start the show. These, they stack so flat.
That's the great thing about those. Like, there's an entire 4-pack of those stacks to the thickness of, like, one competitor stick. Can I be the hunter that can get 10 feet from this deer? That was my ultimate thing. It wasn't about, like, oh, I need to be able to shoot better to execute a better shot. It was like, no, you need to be able to hunt better and hunt better than anybody because you're not a good shot.
What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic here, joined by Cody D'Acquisto of Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Cody, last time we talked, and it was a great podcast, we talked light and fast mobile deer tactics. I'll tell you what goes fast. The time between this podcast and last podcast, because it's actually been a minute.
Yes, it's been a long time.
Man, that was a phenomenal one. We talked a lot about your kit, how you use it, tactics. When we were getting the stuff out of your van earlier, for some reason, even though I know we're going to talk about your minimalist style kit, you're like, yeah, can we grab some gear? And then when we left, I'm like, oh, that's it. Like, it's still not a lot of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and there's more stuff here than we had last time. Based off of the first episode and it getting such good feedback, you know, I figured, like we talked, we'd show how that's evolved, what I'm doing differently now, but I also, you know, got a couple different configurations for those guys who might be hauling a little bit more things or maybe not able to go as light and fast as kind of the approach we tackled at the first episode. You know, I know even as of recently, I'm trying to do more with the vlog and stuff. So just that added filming equipment too, also, like, you know, adds to what you got to carry. You know, so even looking at filming as minimally as possible. So I got my film rig here, like my camera arm and a couple of things I use. We could even dive into some of that stuff too.
100%. Yeah, I never would have suspected that you had your film kit built into what we have on the table right now.
Yeah, it's here. Yeah. But that's, you know, that's what it's about, man. Optimizing it, right? I don't want to take as much, and even, oh man, we talked about this briefly earlier, which I want to also add, we should just call this podcast a tribute to the podcast we already had over lunch. That was some deep, awesome.
Oh, that was some good stuff.
Deep, awesome stuff. But
we got philosophical.
We did. But in the midst of trying to, you know, be present in the moment, hunt and film, you know, do all that, you got to, I think, one thing I struggled with always was when I was trying to film my hunts, I was like having to choose between, I started edging over to like video production versus actually hunting. Right. And then all of a sudden, then before you know it, you're kind of out of what you're so caught up in trying to capture it that you're like, oh, man, I'm not even hunting like I should.
Yeah. Am I trying to hunt or am I trying to make a film?
Exactly.
And
so
it's tough.
Which is why, you know, I kind of went I went dormant for a little while, but I was just really trying to just be in it, especially learning the new equipment and going back to traditional archery and just trying to make more of a effort to be present. But that had me analyzing all that film equipment too. And like, okay, what can I take? How can I make this as simple and easy as possible to where it's not cumbersome and overwhelming, and I can still be present, still be a hunter hunting, and just capture all the good stuff.
Right.
So
yeah. Capture the essence of the hunt itself, but not compromise why you're there in the first place.
Exactly. And I don't want a film guy either, because like that's another thing. I've always been a solo mission guy. I mean, not that I got a couple things planned this year that I'll be filmed, but for my entire life I've hunted alone. So, and one person, one movement, like I know I don't have to worry about anybody behind me, and you got double the scent. Like there's a lot of things you can get in with that too. So, but yeah, so we'll even talk about some of that.
Yeah, I'm pumped. And between the last time we chatted, I guess formally, and now, I mean, you guys have some really cool new. I mean, your products have evolved over that same time period as well. You got a lot of new stuff.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think that coming up on 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So we've been constantly refining. We probably have double the SKUs we did before. But one thing that we're adamant about is even when we have a great product, we try not to let it sit, which sometimes is actually a pain in the ass for me, because it's more changing of things. But there's so many times where somebody buys a stand and we get a call and like, wait, is there? I have 5 hooks I seen a picture and then there's 5 accessory hooks inside the stand, and there's this little tiny cutout. Like mine doesn't have that, and we're just constantly evolving, man. We just like inline. Anytime we're like, ooh, this right here, is a little weak point. We could add this to make it better. We just toss it right in inline. So it's kind of tricky sometimes, but it's nice, and I think people appreciate that because we're not leaving well enough alone, and we're always still thinking, right? We don't just have something we let sit there for a long, long period of time. I know even on this stand, for instance, so my stands are usually really beat up and ugly because they're always like prototypes, and they get a lot of use, and they got random grinded on parts. So the setup that I have right here, actually, that I brought today, is what I'm coming into this season with, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of some prototype sticks that I was running last year, a seat setup off of an older, larger rig that I was testing, and then a brand new 0.5 platform with a couple modified bow holders. And like, there's so much to dive into here with stuff.
So this is the custom Lone Wolf custom gear.
Well, yeah, but that's the great thing about it too, is you can order all that stuff now too. So even since the last podcast, like if you like that stand size but you want a bigger seat, you can do that on the website. And you can get a taller beam if you're taller, or if you want a different seat feel. Yeah, you can change the beam height, you can change the seat size, platform size. So you can kind of do that. I wanted to roll with the custom gear as much as possible. So it's kind of a nightmare with SKUs, but it's good. And on top of that, there's always little tiny like tweaks and things that I'll do to my stand that ultimately I think you will find in the line. But that's how they start. They start as like a little fabricated solve to an issue that I had in the field, and that's how it happens.
Nice, man. Well, let's grab this thing and talk about it. I mean, so
yeah,
this stand
you can slide that over a little bit.
Is which one is this one now?
This is the 0.5. So this is the 0.5 with a standard beam. So that's going to be like your standard seat height. But this has a large seat. So the reason I run a large seat is because my style is I like sitting. So there's standers and there's sitters. You get, especially like with the saddle movement now, and a lot of people don't like, the seat's not important to them. Well, me, like I really, that's how I can be the most stealthy, the most low profile, is I get comfortable and I just sit 90% of the time.
Gotcha.
Shoot sitting down, more stability, all that. So I always run a larger seat just because I want that little bit more comfort. I also use the stand kind of as it's intended as a pack mule, right? Mm-hmm. So the bigger seat I got, the more room I have to put clothes on late season and things like that. Or if I, need to take, we'll get into that, like different pack or setup configurations. So it's nice. It's nice for that as well. It can also, I don't have one on here, but you can run the bow holders off the seat too. And it just gives you a little bit more room for that. So, and then even kind of under the hood, like you don't realize it's going on, but so this is my camera arm for filming right here. So this is a razor pocket arm that we make, that I can take off here just to kind of show you. So you want to talk about minimal or minimalist filming equipment? Right here is our We have a standard pocket arm that holds like larger rig cameras. This is the Razor, so it's actually new for this year. You can see how slim that is. So it's super lightweight, super low profile, and I just have a very simple phone head on there. You can feel that. Just see how it feels.
Geez, yeah, that's nothing.
So that right there just lives on the stand, lives on the underside of the seat. Having a little bigger seat helps for that. Also, you know, I like to run. You'll see I have 2 accessory straps on the bottom of the seat, as well as, you know, this one on the top of the seat. So it's just, again, so I can strap, here's my down coat. Like, so as it's getting colder, I can strap things and I can really rig them up on the tree stand itself. So that bigger seat gives me a little bit more room to do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really does act as, you know, your pack frame essentially.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So
that's cool. And did you like after, like, did you grab these straps and do this after then?
Yeah. Yep. So like, you know, your typical stand is going to come with all the necessary bells and whistles, your seat cushion, your backpack straps, your fastening belts and stuff, and then a lot of all this other stuff is just little add-ons. So like these are our accessory straps that we sell on the site. They're actually the straps that are used for the pocket arm, but you can buy them. They're just made to kind of just cinch on random things, and you can cut them to size, whatever. This, you know, the stands will come with a traditional thickness seat cushion, this thick, but I double 2 thin ones that we offer, and I do that just because I actually end up sliding things in there and using that as a little bit of storage too.
Oh, interesting. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
So
I noticed that off the go. I was like, oh, you're doubled up there. And
and
it does have a lot of cushion, maybe some extra insulation there.
Yeah, a little more comfort too.
What do you put in the middle there then?
So usually like trim saw, screw in bow, like a bow holder, like, you know, just in case I need a screw in. A lot of those little things that I don't want to have in my pockets. I don't want them to take up any room in the chest rig, and they can easily live right in that seat. And they're thin enough that they don't affect the comfort of when I'm, you know, so whether it's in between the seat, under the seat, I'm kind of a squirrel when it comes to the seat issue as far as packing things away in there.
And is that you just kind of wove some paracord?
Yeah, I just did that with, I was kind of, you know, just trying some things one day. Now, typically it comes with Velcro, but because like I wanted less, you know, possibility for anything to weasel out, so I just did that paracord stuff. You know, added a few, I taped the perimeter of that, but added a few, these are just simple hardware hooks you can get from the hardware store, taped them up, and we already have, you know, we have them built into the back of the platform. Mm-hmm. That's good for you know, hanging your binos or anything, or grunt tube, like those are right built in on the backside here. But I just wanted to add a couple more. I usually like to hang my pack or anything else I might take right there. So I'll hang it off the seat too. It's just kind of right with minimal movement. Then I can grab anything. Just it's right in my seat. Kind of straight
down, grab it.
Yep. So larger seat, standard beam. I run a waist belt. It's night and day for me. Like, you know, it's not a necessary option, but like, you know, as we spin this around, so this is kind of our stands they come standard with your backpack straps, with the load lifters and all that, and then if you want, you can add on the waist belt. But me, especially with a finicky neck too, miles and miles of scouting, and just over the course of it, I just like to take the weight off the shoulders, man, and that waist support's huge. Even though it's not that heavy of a rig, but I like it.
I mean, I don't know, like I've done, you know, anytime you carry like you're on a backpack hunt, I mean, the waist belt is really like one of the most important, if not the most important feature of the pack. And it's a game changer. It changes everything about it, including just like slop, right? Yep. You know, I mean, it's going to keep that. Yep. You got 2 attachment points there. You've got the chest strap here. Just not having to fight it on the way in has got to be, you know, a big win. I can't imagine, like, if I was using this system, I'd be like, I would have to, like, that would be a must-have for me.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. And then also too, like if I'm running the chest rig too, that's already a little something on the neck. So like if it's just added 2 layers, like I cinch the waist belt up nice and tight, and I essentially have nothing on my shoulders.
Right.
It's just kind of hold in place there, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's a comfort. When we pulled this out of your van, I mean, that's how I carried it up. Apparently I passed the test intuitively. I used it as intended. But
Yeah.
man, it's a wide strap. It's
Yeah.
got like just the right amount of cushion, not too much cushion actually, because I don't need like a huge
Yeah.
crazy puffy thing there. So yeah, like
we try.
like that.
With this, I tried to flirt that line. Like I am working on a crazy deluxe set, like your mountain set, which I don't know if I would ever use them, but there's a lot of people that are like, oh, they want bigger and better. But I for something that's standard issue, we want something that's quality, nice, that'll hold up for a long time, that really feels good, but maybe isn't overkill. Like you said, you don't want to. I don't know. You don't need much more than this, really, in my opinion.
I mean, if it was like a lot heavier, maybe I'd be like, and I guess maybe that depends on what you're putting on, or you're trying to maybe you're packing out a quarter. That's going to change the slow if you.
Different, but even in that sense too, I'm working on. I've been in the process a couple of years working on a collab with Kafaru, and they know all the. I'm like, okay, hey, let's get together, let's mind meld on backpack straps versus. So I remember getting into the weeds at one of their designers, one time, just trying to pick apart the process of that, and with packs and hauling and weight, and and even, they got really nice high-end packs, but even getting down to the brass tacks of it, he's like, hey, any way you look at it, when you toss 100 pounds of meat in your backpack or on your stand, he's like, it's gonna suck.
It's still 100 pounds.
Exactly. It's one of those things where like you're trying to flirt the line of making it good enough for that, but also good for everything else. Good for the other 97% of the time, right?
Right.
And some like what you would need in some cases to make that a couple percent better, right? When you packing out is going to make the 97% of the time, and then all the times with no success, that much, a couple percent worse. So where do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Like, where do you make that compromise?
Where do you do it? So it's like, hey man, you got to kill. You're stoked. Like that's kind of, he's like, he was, advising, like, I always err on this side. Like, let's make something that'll hold up and do well for it, but, not some overkill to where it's gonna. And I agree. And that's kind of where, or this one lined up with, good for that everyday use, and definitely good enough to haul some heavy weight on it. We actually did a spiff a while back to where I was, you could sit on the back of that if you wanted. Like it can hold. It ain't breaking. So It's just a matter of like, comfort wise. So we'd have like people put their buddies on the back and send pictures and stuff and just joking around, But yeah, so it's definitely doable.
That's pretty wild, man. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it is just, for hang on, this thing is just so streamlined.
Yeah, and so these right here, these are those were prototypes of the new micro doubles that we just launched, which they're right here, which is another prototype set, but you can see how streamlined and light these are.
Okay.
These are sitting, right at a pound a piece. I have some webbing aiders on here on this set. But they utilize new micro buckleless cam straps. They're a 1/4 inch thick, so they're super resilient, super strong. They got the independent standoff bolts, and they're just like so lean and mean. This is like your run and gun style stick, like a lot of those mountain guys out east, or if you're looking for something with the lowest profile, minimal footprint, that type of thing, that's going to be your go-to. We also have another model that I don't have here with me, but it's the compact double. It's another great option you can check out on the website. A little heavier than these, a little bit more bulky, still well above and beyond like a lot of our competition in the marketplace, but more of like your, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, it's, mission dependent, man. What do you want?
Right.
You looking to cut weight, or you looking, for the most versatile stick out there, hands down. So we want to provide a little of both,
These they stack so flat.
Yeah. That's the great thing about those. Like there's an entire 4-pack of those stacks to the thickness of like one competitor stick. You got everybody uses a typical inch profile tube. These are 1/4 inch, and even with straps, everything's been designed to where it doesn't affect that minimal profile. There's belt grooves in there to where the belt actually, it allows for clearances, everything works pretty streamlined on those. We have cabelators or webbing aiders, but
okay, yep.
So those
I
are
saw, and I guess the cabelators, similar. I was looking at the website where there's the two attachment points there, so it keeps that loop nice and open. And I like that.
Yeah, and these, I think the cabelators, man, have just been huge for the last few years, and they definitely, like you said, it keeps that step open. It every time, especially coming down in the dark too. You go down, your aider is always going to be right in that spot because it's the spring, it's the steel, it kicks it away from the tree. These webbing aiders, these prototype stuff that I've had on these couple sticks is, I've been trying to kind of merge the two the last couple of years, and working on a few things that'll probably launch next year, but just kind of behind the scenes thing. So then those sticks are just kind of we're another prototype of those. The bow holders, for sure, like looking at those, this is the sidekick, right? So I have two on the stand. It looks a little different. People are probably going to look at like, what the hell is that? That's not a sidekick I know of. But what I actually did is I chopped these down. So when I started getting into traditional archery a lot, you don't need to accommodate for a huge wide limb of a compound bow.
Sure.
And actually the bow is so light and it's such a little pencil in there that all that room, with a big gust of wind, it could move, even with these retainment O-rings. So like our bow holders have retainment O-rings, and then they also have shims. So whatever bow you have, you can put the shims in there to accommodate for the pitch, whatever you want it to sit at, and then you can put those O-rings there just to kind of hold the limbs if it's a split limb or whatever, and it just keeps it nice and short. And then the weight of the bow, it's rock solid. And it pivots, doesn't get caught on any brush or anything. It goes right under your stand. But this one, I just cut the arms off. So your typical arm is probably going to be like that long.
Gotcha.
I just cut them down so it's the thickness of this tiny little limb here, and it works out really good for the lighter bow because you can shore it up against the inside point there. But I always run two sidekicks at least because I set them up in different orientation. So the one on the right side of the stand is set up for my bow facing forward, and the one on the left side is set up for facing this way. So if I'm in a situation where I'm standing using the tree and I want my bow to already be in that direction, or if my shot is going to be over here, I'll sit with it that way already, just to kind of prep for that. And the other side is vice versa. So
I love that. Eric and I were just chatting this morning, and I was like, obviously situational dependent, but oftentimes, like whether I'm in my climber or whatever, like I'll set up not facing the way that I'm intending or think that the shot's going to come from, but sometimes I am facing the same way. It just depends on. So having those on both sides, like I would have never thought to put two on, but it makes perfect sense to have two on there.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. It's like I am the complete opposite of wanting you to buy more gear, right? So even people are like, oh, you only use two sticks. Yeah, we sell 4-packs, we sell singles, whatever. It's not about getting you to buy, because one guy was like, oh, you just want us to buy two bow holders. Like, no, man, there's a tactic to this. So I was actually in, my whole premise with a setup like this is, or like when I go into the timber or a new piece or whatever, I just want to be able to know I can get anywhere that I need to be, right? And that's where we'll get into that kind of climber hang on. There's also, the tools for the job adage, but a setup like this, you can be confident that you can hunt any size timber, thick, thin, apple tree, hedge tree, whatever, big oak. And I just like to have that peace of mind. So there was one time I was actually, and I would always run my bow holder on the right side. It was just kind of the way I did it. It would face here. There was one time or one season a few years back where I got set up in this perfect spot, and I went to this spot because there was like this kind of fallen timber, and it made like an X and wedged the tree, and I put my platform right there, and I got up and I'm like, oh, this is so perfect, whatever. And I'm like, damn, but this big limb was right across the right side of my stand, and I'm like, God, I can't even use my bow holder. Like at all.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I'm like, if I just had one on the left side, and then that got me thinking, there was a situation a few weeks prior to where I was set up and I was kind of like really side saddled on my seat, and I was prepped for a shot over here, and here my bow is way over here. So now like the movement of like I'm trying to watch this, so I don't want to be cranking my neck, but I'm sitting there in the stand like this. Well, now my movement has to come from over here. My entire bow has to swing around the tree and change the direction, right? So I'm like, man, I need a bow holder on this side that's facing this way. So if this ever happens again, or whenever this happens, I can just sit here, have it right here in that direction, and all I'm doing is lifting and pushing out, and I'm ready in the position to shoot. So,
I mean, that is the difference between killing that deer and not killing 100%. That deer. I mean,
those little things and knowing those, and then being able to plan for those, like, be prepared. And that's where like the third place I'll put them, if I will put them, is I'll put one on my seat too.
Really?
You can actually have it on your seat, and then since I'm a sitter, if you're sitting the whole time, then the bow is literally right here. I'll have the bow sit in the seat holder, and I'll just kind of be sitting like this with my fingers crossed, and the string is right. Like I'll just put my arm between the string. For me to get that out to shoot something is literally 3 inches to the left. And then I'm coming forward to shoot. Like if the shot is just going to be out in the front of me, then there's no even having to reach at all or lift. Like that's the next advanced step. That one, not maybe as necessary, but I always have 2 on the platform for sure. And then I even keep a screw in. I think it's on that side of it right there.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Okay, I saw that.
I keep one of those just in case. I don't typically like to use the screw-in ones because I don't like to have to reach outside of my person and make that movement. But if something happens and I can't make it work with those 2, or I'm really hugging that tree tight and I can hang my bow on the tree or something, then I'll use that. So it's just being prepared for anything pretty much.
Man, I like that. And it's making me think. So I was in my OG Lone Wolf hand climber just this last late season. It's hard to believe it's deer season right now. Getting absolutely amped for it, or slash just am. But late season hunt, I'd been in this spot previously. I did more of an observation sit because it was like, it's down on this bottom. The wind is just crazy, swirly, shifty. So I backed off. I'm like, I still have a chance here. I'll get to see some stuff that's going on. I don't have a great chance. But anyway, I watched like 14 deer, pile out in this corner. It was kind of like this like little back corner, cut corn that bumped up to some timber. And so I was going in the next week, and it was going to be my last day to hunt for the season. And I'm like, well, I'm right, wrong, otherwise, wind shifty. I'm pushing my chips in. I'm going in. And I also knew, though, I'm like, if I get into this spot, like my shot's going to be about 15 yards, and there's going to be no reaching for the bow. There's going to be no standing up, which I do like to stand to shoot. But I was like, this is going to be, I'm sitting here. I'm going to shoot this one hole. I'm going to draw back, and I'm going to try and... Anyway, I thought a buck was going to actually do exactly that, but I don't know. I think he probably maybe winded me a little bit, and he did a little bit of a loop. But I guess my point is, I was like, I'm gonna have to hold my bow the whole time. Yeah. And if I had one of those, it would have just been a little bit more pleasant, because I don't really love to hold my bow on a late season hunt.
And that's, to tell you the truth, like what you just described is exactly the situation that I have like all my success in. I don't do a lot of open field edge hunting. Like I'll do some observation stuff, but really when it comes down to it, like that's kind of the bread and butter there, is like, and it's close quarter, right? So the trails are usually close ambushes. So to me, like movement is like so important. Movement, and then, your scent and the wind and things like that are so important and so high at the list that everything has to function exactly how I need it to, and I need to be able to, the difference of, in that situation, you can't, like some people like if you got to do this to grab your boat, like, dude, that movement is just, you might as well just wave a flag. What they can see in their eyes and the peripheral and stuff, and I know because I've gotten busted a lot in my life.
More often than not.
And I just, exactly, and I just test it, man. I used to test it. I used to actually, like, take notes and be like, okay, let me see what I can get away with. Like, instead of always just trying to not, I would be like, trying even the slightest bit of open my eye wider, or just see what they're going to catch, like what they catch in as far as the movement goes. And that's why I've never been a big proponent of actually like your typical saddle, because it like prones you to move a little bit. Like when you're in the ropes, it's just not as stable as when you're sitting in a chair, right? So those slight movement differences, like I've been picked off literally. I mean, I'm talking like just little things. So I try and keep movement inside my body for anything behind me. So if I'm, if it's all right here, there's less anytime, like the silhouette, I guess, is really the nightmare.
Yeah.
Which is why I hunt low. But the lower you go, the closer you are to them, and then there's challenges with movement there. So really, yeah, that's the name of the game, man. You got to have your stuff working the way you need it to, for your style. If you're 30 feet up in a tree hunting a field edge and anticipating a 50-yard shot, you probably don't have to worry about any of that. Right. I mean, they'll still bust you if they're wind you, but it's not as crucial.
Yeah, some of that stuff is less critical. Well, describe, because that's one thing that I really wanted to get at, because I feel like your predominant hunt style of hunting, low and tight quarters is a little bit unique, and a lot of people be like, I would never. Most guys, they're like, dude, I'm getting as high as I can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's situational for you too.
And there's a thought behind that, and there could be an advantage to that. You want me to just give like an overview of what I think? Yeah. So coming from, like, I used to hunt high as well. Like, not that it needed to be a certain amount of feet, but I was more obsessed with like structure in a tree. And when I seen that, like if I seen a split and it was 30 feet up, I would need to get to that split. Oh, gotta be at the split. Gotta hit the structure of the tree. Like I used to have that mentality. And I know, so there's a couple reasons why everybody hunts high. For one, there became this, I think the adage of it was like, okay, we got to get farther away from the deer, which is okay, smart, whatever. Because to an extent, right? The farther away you are, the more you'll be covered. Maybe there's more cover way up in the tree, the canopy that can be. Yes, all these things are viable. But over the years, it became more of like, this is why you should hunt high, to like, no, you have to be like, I've been in the hunting industry since I'm 12 years old, right? There's always been this magical number of 20 feet associated with tree stand hunting. I'm telling you, it's always been there. Or like 4 sticks or 5 sticks, or I got to get at least 20 feet or what. And guys out east, everywhere, it's like, oh, you got to get high, you got to get high, you got to get high. And, whether that's wind advantage, cover, all that stuff. Well, and I fell into that boat for a while too, until the difference is like I really test things. I test theories, and then I make a hypothesis, and then I test that. And then over the course of years where like I stopped wearing camo, started hunting lower, I was searching for more of a rush out of the hunting experience. Like being 20 feet up in a tree and shooting something at 40 yards just didn't, like, I don't know. It didn't, and not that I've ever done that, but that was kind of so I started chasing more of a rush, getting lower, seeing what I could get away with, testing the, those things about movement. And I started to develop this list of like why it's actually to be high in a tree and why it's the opposite, right? So, people think that they have this crazy scent advantage when they're high in the tree. Well, not really. Like, you're actually creating more scent distribution and more of a cone down to the ground. If you're 60 feet up in a tree, well, now your scent is traveling down that entire 60 feet and dispersing the whole way, and it's blowing out more versus like if you're on the ground, your scent is on the ground, then dispersing after the fact. Thermals take play, whatever. So it's not like somebody would say, oh, I do it for scent. Well, that's kind of not always true. Now, a thermal pull is a different story. Like and I'll get to that. That's a plus on the side of height based off of terrain.
Okay.
Now, movement, visual. Well, yes, being farther away from the deer can help you out on a visual standpoint and for movement, but also you add the element of your backdrop. You're 100 times more likely to get skylit moving high in a tree than you are at 6 feet.
Sure.
Because you have solid ground behind you, you know? So right there's the movement thrown out. Like, and these are just things that I'm like, you know, over the years, like, yeah, okay, I'm not buying that, whatever. And in this one, man, this has been my thing since day one. I've preached this in and out, and it's efficiency. I want to be as light and fast as I can because I hunt in a manner that is constantly moving. It's not so. This came into play now. If I am half the height, not only am I getting all these advantages, which I'll go over now for being low, I can do it in half the time. I'm carrying half the gear. I'm breaking down in half the time. You know, I had I've always been a very proactive, aggressive type hunter too. And there was a time I could think back in the day where, okay, I just set up this stand on a ridge. I'm probably like 23 feet high. You know, it's an awesome spot, but it just wasn't happening there. It was happening across the ridge. And my mentality has always been like, well, okay, go where it's happening, which sometimes is overlooked by people. They might not think that way. And it's kind of an eye-opener. And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I should have moved. A lot of people are happy seeing deer. It's awesome when you have a good sit and you see a lot of deer. But at a certain point, like, okay, do you want to see deer? You want to kill a deer? So, but, I never want to be in that position, too, where I'm looking down like, oh, man, I got 5 sticks here. I'm way up here. I got a freaking lifeline in the tree. Like, damn, for me to get over to that, I'll just do it tomorrow. No, man. With 2 sticks, me 8 feet up in the tree, I am down in 3 minutes. And I am at that spot. And I have a crazy story to tell about that a couple years ago that I can get into later. Remind me, because that's a killer one about just moving for action, especially in the rut. And but anyway, so I started to realize hunting lower that there was another thing happening, right? I started to think about the history of deer, what they go through, and thinking about, okay, what are deer's predators, right? Or what are their 2 predators? I'd say, things on the ground, coyotes, whatever. That's all coming at them on the ground. They see human pressure on the ground. And then over the last however many years, man, tree stand hunting has been the preferred way to hunt whitetail for I don't know how many years, whatever. You might know, but long time.
I guess I don't know the exact number. I can say ever since I've been whitetail hunting.
Long time. The elevated position, right? So here's two places of danger. Here, the ground, their number one goal, right, is to survive, right? So, and everything they do is based off of, surviving, and, they encounter danger a lot on the ground level. They're also accustomed to now looking up in trees, and that was everybody's big adage of, out by me, the deer are so pressured, they come into the timber and they start looking up. Okay, I get that. So my thing was like, okay, then why are you going way up there? Why are you going where they're looking? So I think there's these 2 hot zones of deer looking for predators. Ladder stands are all, typically a little higher. People hunt higher. They're like looking for that change in lighting, which is your silhouette, right, and your backdrop. Well, I started I made this correlation that there's like this zone above ground level, just over the actual kind of in plain sight, is a zone that I don't think whitetail associate danger with. Like, I don't think they're thinking, like, if they see you, they'll get freaked out. But I've seen it happen, and I tested this. This is I've talked about this before, but this was the defining moment because I started testing this theory. I'm like, well, nothing comes at, nobody likes hunting low. Everybody, it's like taboo. There's not a lot of people that hunt low. There's some. Ground hunters do good, but it sucks not having that visual advantage and you're still on the ground, like whatever. It's just, I've never been.
Well, and sometimes it doesn't take much to be able to see down in stuff that you couldn't shoot through if you're on the ground.
Exactly. And then you look at like a lot of these old timers, rifle hunters in per se, they might pop up 1 stick or just to get over that, whatever. Anyway, I started testing it. And what I did is, so in certain circumstances, I would always put myself in the deer's position. And then what I started doing was I'd look at where I would typically be in this tree, and then I'd go to every spot that I would possibly shoot a deer, and I'd look at that spot. And I started to realize there was holes in it. I'm like, oh, man, it doesn't really look good from there. It looks good from here. And there was this one day in particular where I cut this giant's track in snow out in the middle of an open field, and I followed it all the way back. And I wanted to see, where I could ambush him, with the wind, whatever. And I'm going, and he's staying so far away from any timber, right? He skirted this one hedgerow, and it's this big lone track. I'm like, oh my God, this thing's got to be a giant. And he comes, and then it hits the rise, and there's a couple. He stands around for a little bit, you can tell. And then I'm looking down, and I'm like, okay, where is he going to head? And then I kind of lost it in some other tracks at that point. But if you went down, I started scouting to where it got close to the timber, and then I cut the track again. And I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. But I'm looking around, and there was nothing. It was all just scrub, like it might have been like autumn or Russian olive or something, thick at one point, but now it's just kind of limmy. And there was one like half dead, like scrub tree, maybe like 6-inch diameter, and it was like 15 feet high and bare. Completely bare. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can, I'm like, no, I'm sitting there looking at the tree like there's no way. Like this is my only option. I looked and I analyzed the spot so much and walked around and around and around and went back and went forward and where can I intercept? And I'm like, no. And that's what I like to do too. I want to get every piece of the puzzle, right? If there's a spot, I'll find the optimal spot. There's trap spots too. Sometimes you might find a giant primary scrape, and you're like, "Oh, this is it. It's the scrape." That's not always the spot to kill. That's an awesome scrape. It's a good sign. But is it the spot? No. Well, this was the spot, right? So I determined this was the spot, and I'm like, "Damn." Well, what I did was I'm like, "All right, I got to hunt this tree. I got to do it." So I got to where I thought would have the best cover in the tree. It was where it started to limb out. So I'm like, all right, and I'm just sitting in the tree, and I'm like, oh my God, this is. And I got down and I walked all the way back up to the rise of that hill, and I looked back, and I'm like, no, and then I started to look, I started to analyze it, and I looked, and then I picked the spot in the tree from up there where the buck was standing, and then I went back down and set the stand, and I set it, and I'm like, absolutely no way. There's no way. We're talking. This thing was like you could reach the platform. You could reach the platform right here, and there was no cover. There was not a limb on the tree. It was the one bare zone in the tree. And it was 2 feet above the actual scrubby olive. And I was like, well, no, there's no way. There's no way in hell. But I hung the stand, went back to the top of the ridge, looked down, and I'm like, I'll be damned. I can't, I can hardly see it. And then I went back and looked at it again. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Well, whatever. What choice do I got? And I got in the tree that night, backed out, did a big loop around, came in from the back, got in that tree to kind of intercept him, right? And, I'm sitting there for like a couple hours, super dead still. I'm like, all right, a little paranoid, didn't see anything. And then all of a sudden, maybe 45 minutes before light, and it's, there's snow on the ground, so it's plenty of daylight. I mean, it's not, I see just the tips of tines because I see the hill, and I'm just like, oh, and they're wide, and I'm like, oh man, and I'm just sitting there, and I got my bow like this, and then they disappear, and so he's, I'm sure just whatever, and then they pop up again, and I'm like, oh, and he's coming, and then I just see it, and he's stepping up, and then just giant bull of a freaking neck, and now he's at the top of this hill, probably maybe 80 yards or so. Just at the top, just bull, standing there and just looking down at the whole bottom and right at me. And then he stops right in the middle, right? So he scans the field, stops. And I'm like, oh, he spotted me. Instantly, I'm like, he spotted me. He spotted me. Dumb idea. This was so stupid. And he's just burning. And he's well, what I didn't realize is he was just analyzing.
Just looking.
He's just looking. I'm thinking he's looking at me because I'm so low and I'm right out in the middle of nowhere. He flicks his tail and starts to head down, and he's coming, and I'm like, oh my God. And then even then he gets to 40 yards, and he stops again, and he's looking, and I'm like, and at this point is when I was like, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, just please let it happen. And I'm like, wait, he's like looking through me. I'm like, I'm freaking invincible right now. Like, there's no way he could smell me. he's now like he's committed halfway down this hill. If he even had the slightest suspicion, that's what that stopping point was on the top of that rise, is he stopped there every night because he wanted to check out what was going on. Prior to that, he was blind to what was over that hill. So he's looking, and I'm like, I got it. I got it in the bag. And he comes and makes it probably 15 yards, me to you, eye level. We're eye level. And then he ends up just veering at the tree. And as soon as I lose his peripheral, I smoke him right through both lungs. And that was like, I was like, it's game over. And then from then on, I looked at setups totally different. I looked at them as, how low can I be? How can I hide in plain sight? How can I use not just cover in a tree, but ground cover to my advantage?
So that's what I was going to say. It's like in that small, scraggly tree, did you just have like a ton of back cover?
No, what it was so I had the ground behind me. That was my back cover.
Oh, it was just
around. I had the ground and all that low stuff behind me, beyond me, and it was zero movement and back cover that did that. And it was like, so, because a lot of people that I'll talk to, that I'll start the conversation, they're like, oh, I can get that. Yeah, you're getting low and you're just totally entrenched in branches, like you're in the cover. And I'm like, yes, I mean, if you can be in the cover, that's good too, but you don't always need like direct cover. Like, so there's levels of cover, right? Maybe we call this indirect cover. But it's like, you don't, so then, and I'll be at the road shows and I'll show like a bare tree. Like, oh yeah, I would hunt this one right here. And they're like, well, what? That's so stupid. I'm like, well, yeah, but you might think it's stupid because you're in your mind thinking you don't have cover. But come back here with me once and look at the tree in the big picture. Nobody looks at the big picture. They're too caught up in what they think. And that's what I try, like at the road shows, at my workshops, is like, I try and get people to think outside the box, right? Like, hey, it's not about, you don't need the limbs, you need to be still. Look at a deer. A deer is brown, light brown. Look at how they disappear with lack of movement in any terrain. Any terrain. The greenest early season, you don't see a damn thing until they move. It's the same concept. So you need to be still. Some people try and hunt low, and they're these type of guys. So if you're trying to hunt low, you're trying to cover a lot, and you're not stealthy, and you're a mover, hunting low is not for you. You might not even want to try it. But you might need to get higher to get away with that stuff. But that's where I think focusing and pinpointing down on, your kill zone, your one trail, getting your movement in check, getting your system dialed in and down, can really help to that and be beneficial. But yeah, that was my whole, kind of a long-winded story, but that was my whole journey into getting lower in the tree. And then from then, I was like, you know what? I just, I started telling people about it. A lot of people try and call bullshit. Then oh, well, yeah, you're in the Midwest. Anybody can kill deer in the Midwest. It's easy. So I started, I would talk with these guys out east and down south, and a lot of them are on the team nowadays, and they could never. And I'm like, hey man, just do me a favor, just try it, just do what I'm telling you. Just dude, before you know it, they start killing deer. They're like, dude, I never would have thought. PA, public land, one stick off the ground, freaking like just, and same thing down south, and it's just like, man, there's something to this. And I'm like, I'm telling you, man, it's just. Just think outside the box, man, and don't. So yeah, it's awesome. It's cool to see that being more adapted, and we sell more setups now with 2 sticks than we do with 4, and that's insane. Just over the years of trying to preach it,
I've been trying to get more minimalist. I'm actually pretty good. However, one thing that I just can't see myself doing, like I can see myself hunting low, but like. I'm bringing 4 sticks. I might only use 2,
well,
but I'm bringing 4.
So to tell you the truth, so I started that way. And because now everybody, now I'm going to go this. I'm going to give this to the height, right? So here is an advantage. There are circumstances for thermals and 4 different terrains where like you are going to need to get higher to make that spot work. That's a thing. So now with the thermal, playing that lift. And sometimes you need to get lower. Sometimes, I was going to start this thing where I kind of react to some hunts and why they go bad. And I guarantee you I can spot out hunts that are shot in the foot because people were too high. And if they were lower, they would have had a different thermal effect. Well, the same thing happens with height. When you start to analyze it, and I do that all the time, I'm always just thinking, so if you're in a situation and it's really ridgy ground and you're trying to get that lit, well, the higher you get to get the advantage of like that hillside is needed, right? So like, you know, I remember being in a spot one time, even after I adapted this hunting low mentality, you know, years ago, and after I was preaching it, and I found this spot, and I'm like, oh man, this is not, and I had to go back to camp, rustle up some more stuff, and I came back there with 6 sticks. And then I remember posting a video, and so many people were like trying to call bullshit. Oh, see, he doesn't hunt low. He hunts high. He hunts 20. And I'm like, hey man, I'm like, here's the difference. I knew that to hunt this spot, there was no way around it. I needed to get as high as I possibly could. 6 sticks was all I had, so that's all I could use. And I gapped them suckers big time. I mean, did I like it? No, but I was so ate up, and I was so sure I was going to get a shot at that buck I was trying to hunt from that, and I didn't. But that was what needed to happen at that time, and that was the last like really high set I've ever set. But I will, even with 2 sticks, 9 times out of 10, the trees I'm in have limbs and stuff. If I need to get the max height I can get with 2 sticks without stretching it is 15 feet. I hardly ever take them there. If I need to get 20 feet in a circumstance, use a limb or something, I will. I hardly ever do. But I started to also adopt the mentality based off of efficiency and based off of trying to train for a marathon, not a sprint. So I got into photography, right? This is a whole side tangent, but it's related. And I got in the rabbit hole on what lens to get. You get on the YouTube. Sound like you get on YouTube.
I like to say it that way too.
You get on YouTube and you need a 50 mil. Oh nope, you need a 70 to 200. That's it. Oh nope, you need the kit 15 to 180. Like, and this and you know, whatever. Well, my head just started to spin, and then I seen a video, and one dude was like, a good photographer can get it done with anything. Or it was something about like, you know, you want to get better at photography, get one lens and figure out how to be as dynamic as you can with that one lens. And I seen that video and I instantly thought hunting, and I was like, I'm never taking 4 sticks in the woods again, ever. If I will make do with the 2 sticks, I'll find the next spot that lets me play my game and be more efficient and not burn out. Because I know too, not a lot of people have this luxury, but I put myself in a position where like I hunt every day. Now, I still got to work every day, but it can be like I'll hunt 2 hours in the morning, I'll hunt 2 hours in the evening, I'll come back, do emails, I'll get on the phone, I'll be designing shit. I hunt so much and I hunt all over, and I know that I need to preserve those. I need to be as efficient as I can because I need to be able to hit it hard on December 28th, just like I'm hitting it on October 5th.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm going to do that is less gear, getting up, getting down quicker, being more efficient. That's what made me adapt the light and fast mentality. Is instead of just stripping as the year goes by because I'm gassed, I start out like that, and I train for the 10 rounds. And so I told myself, I'm like, it's that one instance, I'll figure out a way to make it happen, and that's why I ditched him.
I mean, it's interesting the point you make about the more gear, the more sticks. Because I've been there where I'm like, I don't want to reset up.
I know, dude. That right there. That's it. That's what I never want to happen.
It's like not only do I not want to do it, but then I'm going over here. I'm making more noise.
Yeah.
I'm doing now.
More noise, more weight, more time.
2 years ago, I ended up not getting the deer, but the move made, and I only moved 20 yards.
Yeah.
But I got set up, and I was like, I don't like it. Once I got up, I was like, I don't like it, and I didn't want to get down, but I did, and I reset up, and then I actually got a deflection. Like seriously,
yep.
I didn't even see it. I didn't even see it was like the single vertical vine thing. It was a chip shot on like a nice 3-year-old buck. I'd endured a rainstorm all day. It was my week to hunt before I was leaving, actually for a different hunting trip, which I guess is a good problem to have. This is at home in Wisconsin, and I was like, and I see this buck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is why you sat all day. This is why, and like it was like a lightning storm. Like probably should have gotten down. Came like right underneath the stand. Like I had to wait for him to get out from underneath me and go a few steps before I drew, and then I got that. It was so bizarre. Like I shot, and I'm like, what happened? Why isn't like I was bewildered why this deer
wasn't
like
on the ground or what didn't drop.
Yeah, it didn't have an arrow in it. I'm like, why? What's going on here? And then like when I finally found my arrow, or I'm like, where is it? And I'm like, what the heck? And it's like completely not not going the same direction. Anyway, but the move helped. The move.
Hey, I'm sorry about that.
In practice or whatever, it was like it worked. But
that sucks, man. I truly believe though that those are what keep us coming back. It's not the ones we kill; it's the ones that we didn't kill. It's
dude, the ones that got away are the ones that like they haunt you, but they keep you going.
Yeah, dude. This is a roller coaster game, man.
I got a lot of things keeping me going these days.
yeah. Me too, man. 100%. But that brings up that story I was gonna have you remind me of. But it's the same situation, right? And I tell this to a lot of guys too that are caught up in the taking more sticks and not minimizing. And I just want to know that. They they play it back on me. They're like, well, just like you want to stand, I can get anywhere. I want to know I can get any height.
And so I've talked to you. We've been talking for almost an hour. I'm still in that mindset.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want to be, like you said, like it's just, I oftentimes don't know where I'm going to end up and what is going to be the optimal set.
Yep. And that's in 100%. And that's, and that's something that you have to, like, you got to make that judgment. You might not be a 2-stick guy, and that's fine. Or you might leave 2 sticks at the base of the tree. You might do that for 7 years, and then finally you'll call me one day or send me a text like, Cody, I finally got rid of those other 2 sticks.
I know.
I think you haven't crossed over into the plane of, like, hunting low that consistently yet.
Yeah.
Now, when that happens and you start to realize, so not only that, like, I look at things totally different. And everything I look at now is how do I make it happen from the height I need to be, not, and then aside from those thermal situations, then I get into like, okay, well, I can get up there with limbs or I can do whatever, or I can maybe slide down this much. And I will still make it happen if I need to. But the efficiency thing on that standpoint, I was hunting in the rut. It was a couple years ago. And I was on, this little kind of pocket on the inside corner of an ag field along a river, big river system. So I'm like, okay, I'm just banking on, bucks cruising up and down the river and then coming to check this big block of timber that I'm sitting right in the little corner for, right? So
it sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's an awesome spot, right? And so I get up there. Or I get set up and I'm sitting and, there's I think maybe about a half hour in, I see a doe bust out and then this freaking Magnum is chasing her. And they come right up the hedgerow from the river and they dump right into the block I'm in, but it's like 65, 70 yards. Like I'm here and then the hedgerow is like 75 yards. And I'm like, and the wind is decent for the hedgerow and where I'm at. So I'm like, but as soon as I see it, I'm like, boom, move, right? So I literally, I'm like, I got to get over there. Not even a hesitation. Pack my shit down. It's a matter of minutes. I'm only 2 sticks high. Boom. I literally run, sprint across the field, get up in that tree, probably set up, bow in hand, 5 minutes. Like, dude, I'm talking lightning fast, right?
Wow.
And I'm there. And I'm like, okay, it's going to happen. Bam. This is it. This is what we do. 15 minutes later, I see that freaking Magnum at my tree I was just in, sniffing, just smelling where I just was, just like he must have let her run off, and he's coming down to investigate that corner, and he's smelling all where I'm at. And I'm like, oh, and he just busts off, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, okay. I'm like, and not busts off in a freaky way, but he like just, he's got nose to the ground. He's looking for does. I'm like, bust down. Run over, get back in that tree, and I'm sitting and I'm like, all right, another 5 minutes, and it goes kind of quiet for 30 minutes, whatever. Like maybe 35, 40 minutes goes by, and off the river, another shooter, not as big as this one, but comes beelining down that hedgerow right past where I just was.
Oh
and I'm
gosh.
like, oh my God, like you can't. I'm just thinking like you can't make this up, right?
Yeah, I can't win.
But. So, for instance, I tell that story, and I never shot a deer that day, but do I regret it? No, because those are the moves you need to make. Like, what happened was like winning the lottery 3 times. Normally, and I would rather do the move, be proactive, then sit there. If I would have sat there and that buck would have ran back that hedgerow to get to the river, I would have never forgave myself. Right. I'm just like, and where this comes into play is like, if it's taken me 20 minutes like to do that, and if I ever in my mind am like, I don't feel like moving, like this is too hard to move, then I know I'm doing it wrong. Like that's what I use my basis of for. So,
well, I mean, and yeah, you're saving yourself, not saving yourself, but you're just putting yourself in a position to where like you can just always have that mindset. And I think that's,
and
it's critical.
I sit in like, that time of year, I might hang 3 or 4 stands in one morning. I'm just moving with the movement, right? I might sit on a field edge, get that first hour, creep back into the timber, get that more transition hour, and then creep back along the bedding area and chill there for a while, maybe find a pinch. Like, I'm not setting up 25. I'm not just posting up there all day.
Yeah,
sun up to sundown. So, if I'm doing that with 4 sticks, getting 20 feet every time, and you ain't doing that for a whole month.
Well, and obviously you've seen.
Well, you could.
You could. You've seen a lot of success, but then also with the gear set that you're bringing in the woods, that's just how you look at the woods too. Like, so you're looking.
What I started to do is I wanted to make the gear that was designed for this exact style. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, now I need this run and gun ultra efficient system, and not so like you could run 4 sticks and get way higher and still be super lightweight and minimal. But yes, you're right. That's how I'm looking at everything, and I'm just analyzing it that way.
When I think we'll get here because you guys have a new sweet climber, but I've used a climber for a lot of years. For a lot of years, that was my only stand, right? And really, at least for me, because I guess I've always kind of had like a mobile, like I never had like I was hunting like a lot of. I started hunting whitetails when I got to Nebraska, and basically only public land is what not because I didn't want a sweet piece of private to hunt, by the way, just didn't have it. But they just kind of never knew where I was going to end up, or this tree or that tree. But a lot of the trees were conducive to a climber, which was super, super beneficial. But also, when I would go to a piece of woods where maybe it was a mix, like I looked at the woods from the perspective of, well, the tree that I need to get in, I want it to be a tree that I can kill a deer from. But it also has to be a tree I can get my climber into. And so, I don't know. That's it's interesting. I hadn't looked at it from the put up tear down perspective and just being able to like boom, boom, boom.
And that's why a lot of people love climbers.
That is why I love it.
Yeah, and if you're in climber country, or if you're in like the timber allows for it, like that's about as efficient as you can get any height you want with the same amount of gear. And that was what we redid the climber, the crossover. Did it more light, more compact, more streamlined, more user efficient, like just bettered the climber in every way, shape, or form in a time where climbers were starting to be forgot about. Like some of the old, obviously lone wolf climbers are still there. A lot of diehard climber guys in the South and on the East Coast. But over the years of pushing this setup as like an all-around setup, it started, the climbers took a little back seat, and then with the saddle boom, there was no innovation happening in any climber in any way, shape, or form. So I was like, we need to hit everybody from the other angle and redo the climber and make it better. And so, the old man was really excited about that. He took the lead on the climber stuff. Back in the day, Lone Wolf started with climbers. That was the first ever stand. And it was climbers for like 15 years before there even was a hang-on. And sticks. Dad invented the first climbing stick.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in like early 90s. Yeah, it was like the individual piece climbing. Like there was ladders. There was like legit ladders back then that they lean up to the tree. Nobody had individual climbing sticks that strapped to the. So he patented them, and he had the first ever climbing stick.
That's cool.
Yeah. So then so climbers were, so that was near and dear to his heart, was the climber situation, and yeah, the crossover is a beast, and it's got crazy tech, man. I wish I would have had one in stock to bring here today, but the machining on it is insane. The profile, is like everything nests in itself. The profile is like 1.5 inches. It's just over 11 pounds. It's a hybrid sit or hand climb. It's got a unique seat that has an arc in it that gives you more platform room, and it's got built-in stirrups on the crossbar. It's just really it's a new age climber, man. And if you're a climber guy or you got the like, definitely check that out.
I mean, the OG one I have, like I never really like. I've always really liked it, and then I saw that one that you guys came out with, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty interested in this thing.
Yeah, it's the evolution of that one, yeah, for sure.
Oh man, it's like it's like you said, and all the stuff you guys do, like they're it's all so well engineered, so well thought out, so streamlined, and there's just so many like nuanced intricacies of some of like there. I guarantee there's stuff on this that is like cut in. Like I'm looking at this right here.
Oh,
just
yeah,
a subtle little cut right there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for the cable.
For the cable. Like it's just, but it's the little things, and man, they add up. So who like I've said it before, self-professed, love climbers. Like you said, it's two pieces. When you get up. You're always in the stand. I find them to be just like really quiet to set up.
I'll tell you this right now, dude. I was out west. And sometimes when I go out east and I'm scouting or running out there, dude, those like pine growth and like just the miles and miles and thousands of acres of just big straight timber. If I was hunting that, I'd be running a climber, 100%. Like there wouldn't even be a question. It's just like you look. I think I was in a piece of national forest and I did a 10-mile run. I was purposely looking for a tree that I couldn't get in with a climber, and I didn't see one. Right. And I was like, well, yeah, this right here is climber country, like 100%.
I hunted a buddy's place in Wisconsin last year a handful of times. We hunted together. And like I said, there wasn't a tree on the place that I couldn't get a climber in. Yep. And I hadn't ever hunted there before, so like if I go into new piece, like I'll bring, a saddle or something that I know I can just whatever the tree I can get up in there. But I hunted it like twice. I'm like, dude, I can bring a climber I finally figured out, I'm like, I can bring my climber and I know I can get up anywhere I want, any tree. Like maybe you're cutting a limb or something like that, but nothing substantial. And I don't know. They're just like, for me personally, and again, we were talking about this even before this podcast, once you get used to a system, you kind of like that system.
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's yours then. It's your system,
But I don't know. And then just seeing the improvements and what you guys did with that one, it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, we're always trying to evolve and keep going. Which, speaking of that, like on your side of things, getting into some of the other stuff like my little rigs or my other additional gear, glass has become an important thing for me, and these are the ticket, man. So now, me, I like small, minimal, compact. My go-to glass from you guys has been these little guys. And these are but because of how small they were. Now, my favorite binos were the 10x42, the razors, they were this model before they were shrunk.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, now, dude, so these in that package, these are going to be my go-to. They're not horribly off. These are tiny for anybody that.
Right.
These are the 8x32s, and I just love the profile of them.
That's a Diamondback, I think.
Yeah.
8x32 Diamondback. Yeah.
Yep, Diamondback, HD. But the glass on those, the razors, the UHD, I was obsessed with them, but I didn't want that bulk with my minimal, now. So essentially, the glass in a nice minimal package for a whitetail hunter is insane. So these are going to be the ones I'm running all year.
The optics in that are off the charts, and I've never been a compact optics guy. I'm always I want a full size bino. Man, we came out with those, and so there's an 8x32 and a 10x32. Optically, they absolutely murder. I mean, that is a special binocular. They do not be deceived by the size.
Yeah. No, that's what and I didn't know too, because when Sawyer reached out to me and told me about it, I'm like, oh man, dude, that is right up my alley. Everybody's wanting and that's what I want. And he's like, well, what do you want? The 8 or the 10? I'm like, which one's smaller? And he's like, well, they're the same housing. And I'm like, okay, just give me the 10 then. But like, had the 8 been smaller, I probably went with that. But when I got them, I wasn't expecting them to be this small. I'm like, okay, they're probably going to be a little smaller, but still too bulky for me to want to run. No, dude, these are knocked it out with these. So I'm pumped on those.
Yeah, I used those all last fall. I think I got them 2 springs ago, so I've got 2 turkey seasons under my belt with them in one fall, but it was just, and I like the compact size too, so I got on a deer last year that I hit, and actually I lost it, so it was like super just a bummer. I still like question marks because like I just thought it was perfect. Anyway, but shot that deer, thought he was going to go behind the stuff and tip over, and then I didn't see him come out. I'm like, cool, that's a good sign. He's only like, where he disappeared was only like 50 yards away. And then like maybe like 5-10 minutes later, I see a deer creeping along the inside of this ridge, and I'm like, certainly not. Well, it was him. And but just being able to like in the moment and be able to like have my bow in my hand, but also very steadily hold a high quality binocular, because like a bigger binocular, like I'd like to hold with 2 hands. You can hold it with 1 hand, but it's not like super optimal. Like I was like just leaning into the tree with those and just like watching that buck, seeing where he was going.
No crazy arm pump after 47 seconds with the solo hold.
Right. And so that was like one, I guess the reason I tell that story is because like that was like a standout moment for me. I was like, oh, these are like really pleasant to hold one-handed for an extended period of time. And just optically, they just, they're light, they're fast, and optically they are, I mean, that's a top tier binocular for sure.
Yeah, I dig them.
Comes with the case that you have there.
Yeah, which actually, the old case that I had, or the one prior to this that we did when we did the last video on, I know got a lot of questions about where to get that one, and it was an exclusive case that came with the UHDs, and this is now the new one. But you offer this regular, right? So this comes in like a coyote brown or something.
So
tan.
So each UHD is going to come with that case. So that's the Glass Pack Pro.
Yeah.
And like exactly what you just said. So this is the smaller version. There's 2 sizes. So this is the one that's going to come with that 8x32, and it comes in that like kind of like that sage green color, if you will. And then you can buy it just straight off the website if you want one. Like you said, it's like coyote brown in those same 2 sizes. Yeah.
So that's what I'm running. Then it's going to be that Glass Pack in this color just comes with these, which I like because it's a little bit more low profile than the last one. This right here, I don't know if we want to get into this right now.
Yeah,
but so I kind of did it a little different this time. So a lot of people that have been watching what I'm doing in the stories and stuff, and they've probably seen that I came out with this, we call it the half pack. And so really I kind of transitioned. So early into probably mid to late October, I'll be running this as my primary unit, right? And everything I have goes in here. So like this one's decked out. I got my little trim saw here. I got, just like we kind of went through last time, I have a GoPro clip for like a little homemade chest rig that goes on this. Got my tags in there. I'll have my, got my knife. Just all the essentials. Here's my like wind indicator bottle. All the essentials stay right on that little rig. And then as the season goes on, and I start to want to take some more clothes and different things, is when I'll start to lean on this half pack, right? And with filming, so right now running the Razor arm with my phone that I'm already carrying, which I carry right in this, I put it right behind the binos. My phone I already have. I put it on that arm, and then I have my GoPro as a second angle. That's about as minimalistic as you could run like a filming setup for trying to get decent quality video. You could maybe grab a handy cam and then, stuff it in your pocket, or you'll need more room. But then I did this pack here last year. I think we released it, but this is a little giant of a pack with a lot of different capabilities. So it's not overly huge, but we offer a large full-size we call it the Wolf Pack. It's like a full-size backpack that you can fit a lot of stuff in. So what I did was actually I really went through that and optimized a pack a quarter of the size to be able to carry all the same key pieces of gear. So I looked at somebody like maybe filming a couple tiers up with like a DSLR and a full rig with the bigger like full style pocket arm, and this is what we came up with. So it's lightweight, it's low profile. This one here is a prototype. It's when you get this pack, you can run it as an over the shoulder sling. You can run it with slinky backpack straps, which are actual webbing, not just stand straps that I rigged up. And so you got that option, or you can run it as just kind of a grab bag, take off all the straps and hang it onto your stand. So it's got various options of how you can run it like that. In the storage in here and the organization is just insane. Like, you can check that out on the website. But you can look at that. There's pockets all over, SD card slots. Like, you could fit a full on like Sony video camera with arm, with some extra clothes, with a bottle of water. Like, I mean, as far as a minimalist pack would go, you're like, this is your go-to. I know last time it was like, oh man, I love your concept and your style, but like, I can't ditch my backpack. What is a good one to go with? And there was a few small ones that I've seen over the years on Amazon that I sort of liked, but I wanted to do my own. And I think that right there for a minimalistic little backpack is going to be like, it's gnarly.
What are you using these little bungees for?
So I rigged those up, and I actually just pull them over and right onto the accessory tabs of the stand. So all you do is set this on the seat, and then this little, I made a little tab there, homemade, and you just pull it and cinch it right onto that tab. So yeah, there's a couple. It comes with the pack comes with cordage all around it. So there's cordage laced through all these things, so you can kind of, like, this one doesn't have a lot of it in there, but a lot of little customizations and stuff that I've done to this that we're going to make it on probably the next pack or the next redesign, but just a really good option. So when it gets later and I start taking more things, like, I might, like, here's my flannel rolled up, I can put that. It's got that deployable, for extra clothes and stuff, so you can lay a coat on there, or your down vest or whatever. But that's always a good secondary option that I'll kind of go to once it gets to be late season,
I mean, it does look perfect for holding the bare essentials, which is essentially what you are going into the field with. Yeah.
Well, and even that, man, I think you can get beyond bare essentials with that one. Like, it's plenty big enough. Then you open up the, and you open up the side dump pouches. Like, there's a lot of space. That actually, I don't know what the cubic hold on this is, but load it up, man. Like, it can fit some stuff. Like, you could probably fit this entire glass pack in here and just stuff it full. It holds a lot more if you want it to, than you would actually think. Like, you could fit the big 10x42 UHDs in that front pouch, and it's got a lot of holding capability.
Wild, man. You got the GoPro on the front there.
Oh, yeah, yep. And then, if I am going to mess around with more of a video camera thing, too, it'll go in that. Like, but for now, I'm just running the phone. Man, nowadays, like, even in the last 4 years, like, what the phones have done video capability-wise,
it's pretty incredible.
And everybody has one. So, like, before you had to go, like, buy either a handy cam or something, or, well, now it's like, dude, if you want to film your hunts, like, your phone is plenty good enough to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I'm always like petrified. It's like, man, do not lose your phone, because it's your comms, it's your camera, it's your video, it's your GPS. It's like, oh man,
tell me about it. Yeah, we just went through that story, man. I just completely fried my phone, man. It's crazy when you don't, how much stuff is connected to it and how much of a lifeline it really is. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got up and running. What saw are you using? What saw do you keep
this
with you?
is like, so this one is a little cheapy I think it's like an outdoor edge or something. Oh, it's all full of bark and stuff. It's a cheapie. I also have a what's the brand? Oh man, it's gonna kill me now. It's actually a really good saw. It's a bigger profile. This is kind of gonna be only good for like your little tiny dead twig type stuff. You ain't cutting down any. Well, you could, but that's what this is for. Real little stuff. And then usually I'll keep a couple gear ties too if I need to like, or just a little clump of paracord if I need to grab a big limb and like tie it out of the way or something, depending on where I'm at. If I can't like trim limbs. But I always like to have at least something there, and it just fits.
If it's in your harness, like because I've gone before, so oftentimes like the saw I carry, I'll throw just in like the cargo pocket of my pants.
Yeah.
And that way, as I'm going up the tree, I've got it right there. And But sometimes I've forgotten it. So even just keeping a backup in your harness, which that fits perfectly. Like no matter what, I always have a saw. You know.
You got that'll get you through. If you forget like your primary saw or something too, like even if I'm hunting really thick, like so there was this property with a bunch, like it was all cedars, man, and it was like you can't get in there without at least trimming one limb. Like, and I got a little bigger profile. I'll have to drop the name in the comments of this thing when it posts, but I can't remember it's really nice, but it's a little bit bigger, a little bit more heavy. It's just one of those things where like, okay, do I need it every time? No, not really. But that'll be in this pack, if that's set up for. If I'm taking that, like I'll probably have the better saw with me. But this is the ultra minimal setup, kind of similar to the one the other year. But having those two stages and having this for guys who want to do minimal, but still want to take some stuff or are wanting to film.
Yeah, when you're like, oh no, this like I'm like, oh that's keeps the bear. You're like, no, it's way more than the bear essentials. I'm like, that would be my bear essentials.
Yeah. I'd be curious one of these times to see all your stuff.
It's it's realistically not too different. I'd say.
I bet we could fit it in there.
I probably bring more snacks than you. And we probably could fit it in there. I'd say why I oftentimes bring a bigger pack is like if I need to cut something up and I want because I like to like if I quarter something, I just carry it out in the main bag of my pack, and so I just like that.
Oh, well, 100%. Yeah, if you're doing that, like, and that's another thing too. Like even a game bag, like if you're in a position where you're not going to be able to come out or it's too much of a pain to come out and get the kill gear. A game bag too is awesome. Like I'm actually looking at putting one out for the custom gear line that lives in a little slide pouch on your seat, or can be taught. Because then if you got a nice game bag, and then you toss it right on your seat and you can strap it right to your stand and doesn't even worry about the pack. But yes, 100%. That's a good use for definitely a bigger pack for sure.
That's just the way. Like I'll bring a trash bag, a game bag, and a trash bag. And then I just shove it in the main compartment and off you go. One thing on the table, Cody, that's very different than the last time that you were here is the bow.
Yes. This is my baby right here. Yeah.
It's radically different.
Yeah, man. This right here is the new rig. So a few years back I switched over to all traditional archery and started hunting with a like recurve, standard size. I think it was like or your typical size, 64-inch type recurve with a pretty gnarly hook on the limbs.
Now, was the impetus the challenge or function?
Both, all the above.
Okay.
As a kid, like always wanting to be like the best of the best or the best whitetail hunter I could be, or like I always the idea or like the actual fact of what they call instinctive archery always just blew my mind. Mm-hmm. Like it blew my mind. Like when I would see somebody and you see somebody that truly shoots instinctively and there's no aiming and they're so accurate. And I'm just like, man, is that like, so I've always been fascinated by that. And I've always shot my compound similar. Like I don't ever remember aiming at deer. Like when I kill deer, I don't really aim. I've always had I've always shot one pin, but I always kind of just I had the kisser button, single anchor kisser button, one pin, and if I really broke down my experiences in the woods about aiming, I couldn't really tell you what I did, what I aimed for. It just sort of happened. And, an old timer told me once, he's like, well, that's because like it's kind of, you shoot kind of instinctive with the compound. You're using all that stuff as a reference, but you're not like, you don't have a process. You don't like, yeah, okay, I guess you could say that, whatever that is. So that's kind of how I've always done it. And I've always looked at the traditional archery as like this super intriguing aspect. And like, even at 16, 17, when I was hitting it hard, because I've never gun hunted a day in my life. I always knew that's where I wanted to be.
Step into the dark side.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I never got the opportunity early because it was kind of like not frowned upon, but it was just like there wasn't an option. Dad was a bow hunter, and he was like, "Well, no, like, are you gonna hunt?" There was never like, "Hey, do you want to bow hunt or gun hunt?" So that's just how I came up. And as I got deeper into it and deeper down the rabbit hole, I'm just like, well, why would I do something else? I'm in love with this. And I seen even back then, I was like, that's where I want to be someday. But I just was never there yet, like mentally. And I had shot him a couple times. But yes, so to answer your question in a super long way, the challenge, the function, everything was leading toward that. I got to a point where I needed more out of hunting. I needed something to like reignite the spark, if you will. I've been trying to be more, and over the course of the last, since I've been on here, like I've done a lot of things different. Like I use absolutely no trail cameras anymore.
No way.
I completely ditched camo. Yeah, I don't do anything.
Cody, I'm like on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm getting ready to because I've never been a trail cam guy.
Yeah.
Like for whatever reason, I was like, man, like I don't know, like. Part of it was maybe just, laziness, time, whatever. But also I'm like, I think of it as like almost like comparison is the thief of joy. So like I want to be stoked. Like my goal every year, like, hey, and this is my personal thing. Like if I can shoot a 3-year-old buck with my bow, that's like a really great year, right? And also like time and things, factor into that. I like to chase a lot of things, like I already hunted bears this spring and this fall. I had 2 amazing bear hunts. I don't have an elk hunt planned this year. So I'm going to hopefully focus on whitetails a little bit more than I usually do in September or October. So I'm really pumped about that. But I've just never gotten, I'm like, yeah, I'll just go out and maybe to my detriment of killing more deer. But so then this year I'm like, well, I got to start doing a little bit better about like, and then to hear you be like, no, I pulled back on camera. It's like, no.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, man, I look at bow hunting to me, and we got into this earlier, is this, the experience in what it actually is. And to me, it's a thing of layers. And the more layers you can strip away, the more joyous and the experience is. And like the more you get out of it. Or that's at least how I've been approaching it. It's how it started long ago with hunting low. It's like, oh man. And that's what the original thing that started this was like, I wasn't a good shot. So I couldn't like even hit the target. Like at 40 yards, I was all over the place. I would never even think about taking a shot at a deer at 40 yards. At 30 yards, no. At 20, I was like, you'd look at this, you'd be like, this guy sucks. But like, okay, whatever. Like pie plate in 20 I was happy with that because I could hit vitals. But to me, it was like, it wasn't about that. It was like, can I be the hunter that can get 10 feet from this deer? That was my ultimate thing. It wasn't about like, oh, I need to be able to shoot better to execute a better shot. It was like, no, you need to be able to hunt better and hunt better than anybody because you're not a good shot. It couldn't be as simple as, hey, just practice shooting more. It was like, no, I need, like the hunt was what it was about. So that's how it went from that to then, like if then I was hunting, I was killing them at, 10, 15 yards. The farthest deer I ever shot was 20. I say that all the time. And it's a fact. It was 21 yards on the head. And I went from that to like, ooh, now I'm getting low. Like now I'm like in their visual sight picture. Like it was just like increasing the rush. It was removing the layers, removing the layer of yardage, removing the layer of height, removing the layer of camouflage. Like when I ditched the camo, like removing that, right? And then removing cameras. And there's things that like all these things have just been accumulation. And then now, it landed with the bow. That was like one of the last things. It's like, dude, and and as I would remove these layers, I just became more proficient, oddly. Now and what I love about the cameras is the unknown, right? I hate the adage of like dooming a spot based off of camera intel, and I think it makes people a lot more laxed and not hunt as hard, and you can end up chasing your tail. And I got into that realm with cameras, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but I just had to kind of get away from them cold turkey. Now, with that, if I was a person who's still like all I wanted was a 187-inch deer, and I need to find that deer and then it would be stupid of me to.
Right.
I'm still looking for big deer. I'm looking for the biggest deer I can find, the best deer, but I just don't want that dull. Like, I pitch this, or I present this to you, right? You're heading out for a hunt. On the way there, you got two spectrums, right? One is you and Eric are sitting there. Oh man, you got a picture of a good 8-point with a drop tine. Oh man, I hope I see that big 8 with the drop, man. Yeah, I hope I see Frankie, whatever. Like, you're going there with the anticipation. You know of him, you've seen him, you've pulled his camera. All the camera's been doing the work for you, whatever. You go there, you're hunting anyway, and then you see him. Oh yeah, it's him. You shoot him. It'd be great. But if you were going there with no knowledge of this awesome 8 with the drop tine, and you're like, oh man, dude, I hope we get into a good one. And in your mind, you don't know. It could be there could be 130 there. There could be a 200, right? And then that one steps out. Like, it takes you back to before you had all this knowledge, right? You're out there. You're forced to actually scout and hunt without any prior knowledge. And then when you do see that deer, you're forced to make that quick judgment, and then, oh my God, what is he? Oh my God, I seen tines, and it's a total different experience, total different thing, and you can screw yourself a little bit, like, maybe you shoot one and you had a bigger one there that you didn't have a picture of, but more often than not, I see people super bummed out and pessimistic and like, oh man, I got no deer on my property, I got nothing to shoot here, or oh man, I'm not even gonna hunt, man, the cams ain't getting no pictures. And I'm like, dude, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You need to get out there and still look. Don't, like, the camera is just one tiny fraction of intel. I have physically, because I hunt properties now with other people, and even pieces of public, I have physically seen shooter bucks walk by cameras, not in front of them, but walk in the vicinity of them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean anything. It's only a picture in time and that angle, and I've seen people really mess up by using that knowledge as everything. And taking it full circle, coming back to the bow, right? It was the last layer to strip away, and I knew it was time, so I dove into it. Along side by side with the amazement in instinctive archery I had was also the amazement in the simplicity of the traditional bows. It's a piece of wood and a string. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and when it came down to tuning arrows, it got a little bit into the weeds more than I was used to, but I learned it because I wanted to be able to build my own arrow. I wanted to be able to tune my own. That's the whole point of this too, is to really kind of, I don't want to have to rely on anybody for anything when it comes to that bow. Like, if I blew up my compound, I'd have to go to a bow shop. I'd have to have a replacement bow. Whatever. I wouldn't know this. So yeah, way around the block. But yes, the performance and the challenge. So it was like, okay, how do we tackle all that on and remove the last layer, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is not the bow that you started with.
No, yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about how you got to this traditional bow.
Yes. So I started with like a 64-inch recurve. I was hunting with that a lot. A lot of the thick scouting. I didn't care for the hooked limbs. And right off the bat, initially, the biggest thing I knew, like hands down, like instantly, I'm like, okay, this is, other than being awesome, like, I mean, they're lightweight, they're like nothing. You hold them and you're like, oh my God, it's
like a feather. Yeah.
And when you're in the woods with them, you feel different. Dude,
okay.
I'm telling, dude, it's weird, man. Like, you can shoot one on a target. When you go out and you're hunting with one and just holding one, there's like an energy it gives you. It's weird. So aside from that, but it was big. I'm like, ooh, these are big. This is going to take some. And now coming from, my whole game is like stick in a cedar tree, super low, tight, compact bow, no movement, just pop out and shoot, just shoot them really quick, really efficiently. I learned real quick that the parameters and the size of this was going to be a challenge, which I was fine. I was just like, okay, I just have to adjust. So, but it was really cool. It invigorated something in me. It was like going back to the beginning. It was like, but knowing what you know now.
Right.
Yeah. So it was really cool. It was like, okay. And oddly enough, I up a lot. I actually wanted to do a podcast on all the ways in which I did, but it's all learning, man. I like getting my ass kicked too. So
yeah.
But anyway, so I started with that. Didn't really care for the hooks on the limbs. Then I picked up a longbow. So it was a 64-inch like this, no hooks. I figured it would go through the timber better. It wouldn't get caught up on things when I was pulling it up the tree with my rope, all those type of things. And it was great, man. I remember the first confirmed kill, like the clean kill with the bow. Oh man, dude, the high was, especially after getting beat down and overcoming that and having it be harder, and then like the mental challenge and the no aiming. And I'm an overthinker too, so the more I think with one of these bows, the more my arrow wanders. And because I don't use any point of aim or any reference whatsoever. No, I don't gap shoot. I don't use point on. I don't know any of that.
You're just drawing and looking at the animal.
Yep.
And then just kind of.
Yep. Just fully instinct. Not even that. Just fully instinctive. Like wherever I'm looking, I draw back. I hit my anchor. I shoot.
Okay.
And I was pretty adamant. Like that's the way I wanted to do it. I didn't want any. I've gotten some pointers and stuff. Oh yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that gap shoot. They use the tip of their arrow, and then they do the math, kind of like you would with a pin a 20-yard pin at a deer at 40. Oh, okay, yep. Like they're using the tip of their arrow as their pin, and that's their gauge, and you can be deadly, man. I know people that are really deadly like that, or they string walk, like they know the yardage in finger, so they know if I creep my hand down one finger width, that's 10 yards. And if they know the yardage, then they use their point on at everything. But they just pull from a different place and anchor at. It's brilliant.
Wild.
It's brilliant if you think about it. But the whole point of this, I wanted to be fluid, man. I wanted to be like water. I didn't want to have to think. I wanted to be an instinctive killer. So when I got that first kill, it was just insane. But so the guy I hooked up with when I originally started shooting traditional is named Steve Jewett. And he's at Bushman Bows, and he was originally out of Florida. And when I got in with him for the first time, it was awesome because I was a fish out. I'm like, hey man, I don't know anything about this. I need to, and that's where we started with the recurve and all that. And then over the years, I started talking to him. I'm like, Steve, I need a little longbow. And he laughed. He's like, customary, like people don't like short bows because when you shoot stuff like this, the longer the bow, the longer the arrow, the more forgiving the shot, all that type of thing, and they're a little bit more uncomfortable because the axis is smaller. So there's a thing they call finger pinch, like and it's just not something that's comfortable for somebody to. And I'm like, hey, dude, I don't need comfortable. I need a bow to kill with. That's all I care about. I don't care if it makes my fingers bleed if it pinches them that much. That's the type of dude I am. If it's gonna perform how I need it to perform, that's what I want. And he was like, oh, I dig it, man, I get it. And he made a couple that were like smaller, here and there throughout the years. And he's like, nobody really, wants that or whatever. And he's like, I'll make you one. And I'm like, oh yeah. So I got pumped. And this is what was birthed out of that conversation. And because I even picked up one of his bows secondhand and I had him rework it for me, and that was the longbow I killed with. But this right here is fully shrunken down. So I think tip to tip you're looking at like 50 inches. But not only, like there's a couple brands or couple old or traditional bows that are small, but they're like a full-size riser with just tiny limbs. And they're kind of clunky or whatever, and but this is like shrunk down in proportion. Like the riser's tiny. I even now tuned up these like little 3 mil micro arrows for it. Tuned them so they were as short as they could possibly be.
I noticed how short those things are.
Yeah, so I did that this was all by design, man. Like my other arrows were a little longer, and I picked the spine weight with these. As soon as I seen these 3 mils, I was like, well, if you actually put a 6 mil or even a 5 mil arrow next to this bow, it looks stupid. It doesn't look it looks almost like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I seen these and I'm like, oh, they match perfectly. I got to have those. And I did it to where I could cut them down. So I only have maybe a quarter or maybe a half inch off the shelf at full draw.
Wow.
So like it's just optimized to be the smallest package it can be. This is a takedown bow, so it comes into 2 pieces, so I can stuff it in the side pockets of this pack. Or when I go on I got a mountain trip planned this year, backcountry, like camping and stuff, hunting whitetail. This is what I'll take for that, obviously. But what this is going to do here, what this bow is and he hand makes everything. Everything is one of a kind, handmade. So he even hand painted my Dying Breed logo in there. He's just an awesome dude and makes some really
beautiful,
phenomenal equipment.
It's like it's a traditional bow, right? But it's also so modern at the same time. Like you look at the carbon on the exterior of the lens, like but it's still elegant and beautiful at the same time. Yeah,
I dig it. It's
but this
really
quiver, like even just this quiver, it's so petite.
Yeah, I don't even know where I got that. It was like something I picked up, but that was the biggest issue with that bow is I'm like, now I'm looking at all the quivers are just like bulky, and I actually made my own quiver out of I started, messing around trying to make it, and then I found that, and I'm like, ooh, that's small. Like, that'll work good, and I think that's a perfect size. It's kind of, so I'm excited about that. But the biggest thing, though, coming back to that now, is clearances in the parameters in a tree stand. So, like we touched on before, one thing people don't think about, even with the traditional bow, it's longer, right? Yeah, it's way longer than your compound. But when you draw your compound back, all the clearance is then from your bow to you. It's very tight. The string angle on these bows is just way more savage, and it really. I've had a couple instances where giants were within 10 yards, and I got busted because of not being able to completely draw back. So, a lot of lessons learned with it, but that was the reason I had this bow made, and this will be my first year hunting with this model. But was to get the smallest. It's a little it's a tactical bow, man. It is. It's a hunter's bow.
That's the CQB trad bow. Very cool. I want to get back to this. Is there anything you're doing, or not get back to, but you just made me think of a question that I wanted to ask earlier. You're hunting low, you're hunting super close quarters. I mean, at least what to me would feel like eye level of the deer, right?
Yeah, a lot of times.
How are you getting drawn, or when are you drawing, or what are you doing to get drawn on that buck so it doesn't bust you at 7 yards at eye level?
Yep. And it's an awesome question, and this comes back to where we started. This is where it's so important to think and to know all the moves ahead of time. I talk to so many people on a regular basis that are asking questions. They're asking, how do I find the spot, or how do I do that? But they're not asking the right questions. The devil's in the details, right? It's like, okay, I can say, well, I keep my movement really. But when we get into things like having 2 bow holders in different orientations that ultimately lead to less movement, or those are the things where, and every setup's different. So every time I pick a tree, this is another layer situation, right? I'm looking at the tree. I'm looking at how I can play my game most efficiently. I'm looking at where I obviously have the shot, what's going to happen. I'm playing it through in my head. That deer walks through and then I'm, okay, how am I going to, he's going to be able to see me from here. So really it's really kind of a really lengthy process of thinking everything through and then making the best call for that situation. A lot of times with the situations I'm in, I'll end up having to have that bow in that bow holder on the seat. Like if it's that close quarters and it's that to where I know my movement needs to be minimal. A lot of times I'll have to be holding that thing. It'll even be on my lap because it's going from here to then one motion to being drawn to shooting, or it's like, if I do have to grab it, it's 1 inch out of the bow holder, and then it's like one fluid movement to shoot. And I'll position the stand accordingly to where I don't have to stand up. I can be sitting down. That's another thing. I absolutely am terrified of being caught, being handcuffed. And like if my only shot, people do this all the time, and I've never done this. All the time I see it, they'll hang a tree stand and their shot is turned around this way, standing up, and they'll be sitting down on their phone like this, looking this way. So if that deer comes and is in your lane, you now have to stand up, fully turn, grab your bow, and shoot. That is something that never happens with me because I just think about it too much. If I know I'm going to be sitting on my phone, or I know if that's my shot and I can't sit down, I'll stand the whole time. And I'll have the bow in that spot, and I will be keyed in on every area to get the advantage as soon as I first see them. To not be caught off guard. And yeah, it's just fine tuning your gear and knowing your system, and then knowing how to read deer mannerisms too. Like that's a huge one. When you're that close, you can't move. You gotta be you gotta keep the eyes squinted. You gotta keep your face covered. You don't wanna, stick out like a sore thumb, but you also have to know how to read deer mannerisms very well. And you need to know how to avoid, the peripherals and all those things. And a lot of times I referred to it as being painfully still, and it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So really, it's just it's really thinking everything out
and being just disciplined to do that, right?
And
because that is painful to
and
be
especially
still.
Late season, man, when it's cold, when it's really cold, and like you said, having to hold the bow, or just. It's just things you gotta, and there's times where I've been in a situation where I'm like, oh, I need to be here, or like I've physically or mentally been in the situation where I'm like, I can't sit here, I can't do it right now. I don't have it in me to be that still. I won't be able to stay. Like I just got to go sit somewhere else, and that might be a good spot. And I don't like those times when it's like that, but sometimes I'm realistic in knowing how it has to be, or if I find that spot where I'm like, oh, okay, I think this is where I need to be, but oh man, I really can't. Instead of trying to push that and then ultimately failing and then being pissed and then ruining the whole, I'll find the next best spot to capitalize on that allows me to play my game, sit down how I like to, have my bow where it needs to be, and I'm not hunting a tree. I'm just being smart, like so yeah, I think. And I never used to do that. So I think that's with age too, where I've become okay with like taking that L real quick. Like, okay, well I can't do that one. Let me slide over here. I think there's strength in that too, to an extent.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can even apply that to if you've got a string of days put together to hunt. Sometimes I'll take more, like if I got 2 hard days in, I'll take the morning off, or at least not the morning, but like I'll get in a little bit later. I'll get a decent night's sleep. I won't kill myself knowing that for the time that I am hunting, I'm going to be sharp and I'm going to be in the game. And where if I didn't do that, I'd be like burnout. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe that's kind of similar but different.
It's definitely similar. And I look at the same thing with scouting, and not that you're not working, but everybody wants to be in the tree so much. And for instance, this last weekend trip to Wisconsin, hunting the bluffs, like new ground, I am more a get intel type guy than just hunt guy.
Okay.
Like, I refer to a lot of times, there's different circumstances. Like I'll refer to like going in blind or going in dark. Well, to me, going in blind is having prior knowledge of an area, having somewhat prior knowledge, but you have no idea where you're going to end up sitting. Going in dark is having zero knowledge of anything. That is something I don't like to put myself in that position a lot. I'm talking for like, let's say me and you are going out to hunt tomorrow morning, and we're like, hey man, there's a piece 15 minutes from here, and we look at it on the map. It looks like we could get in here and hunt this, with never driving past it, never parking there, never walking on the place, never seeing the land. That'd be going in dark. Going in blind would be like, hey, remember that spot we scouted last year that day? And we like, let's go hit that ridge like on the backside. Like that is awesome. Like that's more my cup of tea. But because of that, I'm very much like I need to download like the software in my brain of the ground. I need to get I need to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's really big for me. So I can only do so much e-scouting before I'm like, I'm not looking at this map anymore.
Right.
Nothing matters to me. I need to see it.
Yeah.
I need to physically see it with my eye and walk it.
It's always, I mean, and you can tell a lot from scouting. I probably spend an unhealthy amount of time, scouting and looking at the same piece probably too much. But when you get there, man, it just like the veil is lifted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's too much unknown for me. There's too many times where I've looked at something and thought I had it figured out on the map, and I'm like, this is nothing like that. It's nothing like it looks. Like I know that. So I like to have that intel. So where I'm going with this is that I'll often scout more than I actually hunt. And sometimes you feel like you're, man, I didn't sit, or I didn't, and my even buddy went with me in this last weekend. It's like we could have potentially got in, over the long weekend, we could have got in 5 sits. We sat twice.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, man, we're just, I'm like, well, I would rather sit. I won't sit if I don't think I can kill something.
Right.
I'm just not interested in that. Why are we sitting here? Like, I would rather be gaining more intel, even if we never sat once. We would be so much in a better spot, especially early season. People want to they got a weekend off. I'm going to go hunt, and it's September 15th. It's not like it's November 20th where you can just hop in the timber and see a freaking giant roam by and shoot him. Like, that can happen then. Then it's a good time to just get in a tree. If you don't, have any better vices, but like it's intel based now, man. We need to figure out the puzzle, man. It's not just we can't just the odds of just running into them this time of year early is not very good, especially on bigger pieces of ground. So like get that intel, set yourself up for better hunting in the future. If I can download that software internally, now I'll tell you what. After that couple days in that area, I could go in there and go in blind anywhere.
Yeah.
And feel confident,
Yeah.
Or at least confident that I'll be in the best spot of that area. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult, I think, particularly if you have limited time to hunt. Like if you've got 2 days to hunt,
know, man.
then
And
you want to hunt those 2 days.
That's what my buddy was. He's like, dude, we're only down here for 2 days.
Yeah.
He's like, we got to get these sits in, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, no, that's wrong. I'm like, okay, well, would you rather figure out what's going on or sit? Like if you just want to sit in a tree, go for it. Go sit in a tree. And you could argue that like, oh, well, sitting in this spot, going in dark and sitting there will ultimately tell me that the spot wasn't good or not. You know how much time you're wasting doing that? So for instance, there was one time I was kind of feeling a little sluggish one morning, and it doesn't happen too often, but I was like, I'm gonna glass this morning. Something was telling me but then I was kicking myself in the ass for not hunting. Like, the sun was coming up, and it was a beautiful day, and I'm like, you never slack on anything. You haven't missed a workout in years. Like, and now you're skipping the morning hunt, and I was just beating myself up. But I told myself, I'm driving around, and it's just a primo morning, and I'm just Mr. Negative, which I'm trying to get better about. But I'm like, whatever. Well, then I round the corner on the far side, 2 properties over, my big glassing round, and I see a tank, and I'm like, and I see him, and I just seen him from the back, and I caught a glimpse of him, and he was coming out of this like this big draw. But the way the whole draw laid up, it was an arrow to a far corner of the property that I haven't even looked at yet. And I'm like, oh, and as soon as I seen him, I'm jacked or whatever. And then the wheels start turning, and I'm like, okay, where's that feeding? Where's he going? And I started to put all the pieces together, and I'm like, okay, I need to go in blind to that north side. I bet he's cutting that ridge. He's going to be on the closest trail, So I went in there the next morning, got in there, and early blind. I've walked it before, but it's been years since I scouted it. But I knew it. I had it downloaded. Shot that buck at like 7:30.
No way.
And it was that glassing mission that did. Had I not glassed, had I just walked out, because the reason I told myself to glass is I had no leads. I was just hunting. I was just scouting, hunting, and I'm like, And at one point in time, I told myself, like, you'd probably get some good intel if you could see all these things in the morning, because you're always in the tree stand. You're not ever seeing
you're
what's
seeing this tiny little snapshot.
So I'm like, so I convinced myself it was okay, and then the next morning I'm beating myself up. But then ultimately I'm like, see, this is why you did it. You would have never got that intel. So I try and tell myself more that, like, hey, it's okay you didn't sit. It's okay. Even though you could have sat, it's okay that you didn't. As long as you did something to better yourself, or like, or get more intel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, man, I try to, and I'm nowhere near the killer as a lot of the people that I know, including you. But, and maybe this is, I don't know, hopefully it's not like an excuse, but I try to like almost like trust the process. And if for some reason, like, even though
as long
like,
as you're doing the right process,
like mentally, I'm like, well, like you said, like, well, I'm not hunting, so I should do this. But like sometimes, like if I've got like just a feeling, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go with that because I feel like that's gonna lead me somewhere good. Like there's a reason, there's maybe a reason behind that or whatever. And oftentimes, like it does work out, or you see something different, or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, and the worst is when you have that thought and you don't act on it, and then hindsight's 20/20, and then you're like, it's like not making that move and then having the giant come there, and you're like, damn, I knew I should have moved, but I didn't.
Now on the flip side, though, there's been times where I'm like, dude, the last thing that I want to do is get up again, and then you do it.
I know, yeah,
and then you're like, it worked.
Yep, definitely.
But man, I don't know. It's all fun. If it wasn't, I don't think it would consume our lives.
No, yeah, 100%. I agree. It's a blast, and it's a challenge too, man. And sometimes, and all these deer are different. All these situations are different. All the terrain, I love the puzzle, man. And there's always, and sometimes you don't get to finish one, but it's almost like, oh man, and then it gets you thinking. But I just always thought it was the most fascinating thing to be able to go somewhere, and then, based off of knowledge, read sign, read the land, figure things out, put things together, use common sense, use a little woodsmanship, and then ultimately, put yourself in that position to make the kill, man. It's just, it's a very rewarding feeling that kind of goes back to before. Like, I wish everybody could experience what it's like, man. It's, and especially too, when you add like, the element of like, oh man, I've been holding out all season for a buck like this, and I've busted it, and I've let some of these deer go, and I've stuck to my guns, and then when it all pays off, it's pretty gnarly, man.
Well, it is, and by doing that, some people be like, oh, you're a trophy hunter, and it's like, yeah, maybe that's the focal point, like that North Star, but what you gain along the way by not filling your tag early, potentially, and don't get me wrong,
if we were all just trying to shoot a deer, we would never have not even a fraction of the experiences that we're out there that we get when we're out there.
Yeah. Like you get so many more, just time to see stuff, learn stuff, immerse yourself in nature, and then also like that sense of accomplishment when it does finally work out, and oftentimes it doesn't, but man, you sure learn a lot along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever done, man. It's and that's what that's what's got me trying to get more people into it and get more people to kind of adapt that philosophy, because I think it would ultimately benefit everybody better. Like, I think we're just so disconnected nowadays with that, what we come from, right? Like that whole hunter gatherer mentality, and it's I think it's the source of a lot of problems, man, that we got mentally and all that stuff. Like, if we just spent more time outside in nature, and this gets us out there. Like, you made the comment of like, like, oh, like a sunrise. Like, some people have never seen the sunrise or never been in the turkey woods in the morning. Like, it's just, dude, you can't explain it, man. It's just, and we get to reap those benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's difficult if you haven't hunted. It's difficult to articulate, and but man, I think there's just, like you said, it's a never-ending puzzle. If you enjoy a never-ending puzzle that's somehow completely fulfilling, you need to do some hunting. We're on the cusp of October, Cody, and I'm not gonna. I know we've been chatting about some tactics, but I want some now tactics. What are you doing in October? Oftentimes, the time of year that folks aren't super stoked on. Like I think a lot of folks are waiting until November. Not you though. What are some things that you're looking for, targeting, strategies, tactics that you're doing this time of year to put you in the game and on deer?
I think with this one, you need to look at. I think most people need to get it out of their head first and foremost of their typical hunt that they want, right? So like if I asked 50 people, I bet 48 of them would paint a picture of like, field edge hunting, buck coming, cruising up the edge, working a scrape, maybe pushing a doe around. Like yes, 100% like that. And that's where it's at. But and that's where this has to be clarified. Not that it's not a good time. It's just not a glamorous time. It's not, these times are not glamorous times. And that's okay. It's like, but so when you a lot of people, they're hunting as if they were hunting for that type of activity.
Okay.
The bucks ain't there. They're not doing that yet. But that's one of the most beautiful parts about now is these are routine creatures. And what the puzzle is trying to figure out the routine and figure out where it's happening and what they're doing. So you need to switch to that mindset. And like, okay, this buck is not going to be doing what I'd want him to do, or what, like, so many people would just be sitting on the edge of a field edge waiting and waiting and waiting, or like hunting their primo rut pinches and or sitting in areas of really good visibility because they're like wanting to, and you can have some luck in these situations, but mostly all the bucks I kill early are very close to bedding, back in the timber, far from food. Well, maybe not far from food, but like it's just not your pretty hunt scenario. Like these are, it's finding, trying to pinpoint a food source, trying to then figure out where that deer may be coming from, and then intercept them on that travel pattern. It's very simple. And if you can find, like, the easiest part is to find where they're eating, typically.
Sure.
That's one. And then if you can make a good educated guess of where you think they're bedding, like the bedding part is probably the hardest part. And it's not a necessary part. You can do a lot with just knowing where they're feeding. If you know where they're feeding, you could maybe kill them on that food source. But I typically have really good luck in the mornings in October, very close to bedding, where I've snuck in there to intercept them on the way back to bed up for the day. And you usually don't see a lot of deer. And, it's uncomfortable, it's hot, it's not very, like I said, not very glamorous, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So so focus on the pattern. And I think if you have that going into it when you're scouting and when you're trying to, so transitions close to bed for early.
Cool, man. I should have closed it out when we were touching on all the feels of hunting, but then I was like, I got to pick your brain on. So I'm going hunting here pretty soon. I got to pick his brain a little bit more. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Anything else that you wanted to cover before we, punch our tag on this podcast?
No, man, I don't think so. I mean, it's been good. It's been good BSing about gear. No, I can't think. Oh, I mean, I guess. Let everybody know about the vlog. So I know I got, I got a lot of, I usually get a lot of DMs and stuff, and a lot of people were enjoying the day by day journey through my seasons, in the past. So instead of doing that on Instagram this year, I'm just going to do it on the YouTube. And I have my Dying Breed Bow Hunter page. So I'm actually going to do a vlog out of this podcast.
Oh, sweet, man.
Out of the trip here. As you can see, I've been jamming the camera in everybody's face, but yeah, man, just kind of a follow along through my season. On Fridays, I'm going to start to drop a podcast on that YouTube page as well. Just kind of recapping the week.
Okay.
Taking some questions. I'm really trying to just, give back a little bit and connect with a lot more of our customers throughout the season. We also do something on Fridays now called Friday Night Lives on the Lone Wolf Custom Gear Instagram page. So if you tune in Friday night, 7:15-ish, sometimes a little before, sometimes a little after, but we're usually on there for about an hour and a half, and we just take like scouting questions and gear questions and all that stuff, and then we post it to the page. So it's kind of like a little weekly podcast thing, and
That's
I'll
awesome.
grab different staff members that we do it with. So a lot more of that through the season. So if you're interested, if a guy's out there listening or anybody interested in more in-field stuff or to see some of this stuff in action, just head over to the Dying Breed YouTube page and the Custom Gear Instagram and all that.
Sweet, man. No, I love it. And it's funny when you're good about kind of recapping that stuff when it's fresh. It's when you remember some of those little things, or somebody can get a tip that they can apply right now.
Exactly. See, that's the thing. Is like a lot of times you get the information after the fact, and it's like, man, in October I could have probably did that and it would have worked. But it's like, okay. And also, I just think there's so much value in just listening to a story, even like, oh, this is what happened, and like you're just all the things everybody's subconsciously grabbing about that. It might not even be a direct question, but just having those weekly updates, I think, will change perspective in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can even just some of the stories that you've told on this podcast. Like, if you were just telling me your deer story, I'd be like, oh man, he was like super low in the tree, and that's what he was doing. So just like you said, those nuanced things that you can really pick up. So, well, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing your updated light and fast mobile gear kit and tactics today, Cody. It's always a pleasure. We don't do this enough. We need to do this more. Maybe we'll try and make this annual, not quarter or whatever every 4 years.
Call that.
And good luck the rest of your fall.
It's here, man.
It's here.
I'm jacked.
I'm very excited. Much excite. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. Like Cody said, man, check their stuff out, check their gear out, check their content out. It's all fantastic. Good luck in the deer woods to you this year. Let us know how you do, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.